Okie dokie, so we need to go around the edge of our pattern and put staples in different places so that the pattern won't move, because we need to layer our 2 pieces of pattern paper and we need to cut it out because we are getting ready to make the undercollar. And the undercollar is basically just a copy of the top collar, but a small section of the pattern has been removed in order for it to lay better once it's sewn together. Excuse me. So cut out, we need to cut out around our pattern. So that's done. And we can go ahead and put a notch here, because this is not the side we're going to take this out of. Okay. So there's a notch. Then we're going to take this off. So we took all of our staples out. Now we're looking at our undercollar. And what we need to do, what the book recommends, is that we take 1/8 off of the center back and then blend it to nothing at our seam line here. I personally don't really understand why we don't take 1/8 off here and 1/8 off here and then blend to 0 at the bottom of this corner. That's me personally. We are going to do that on ours because really excuse me, the point of doing our undercollar this way is to make it roll under after it's sewn and we press it. We don't really want to see the undercollar if you're looking at the top collar. So for instance, ooh, I hang that shirt up already. Here's another shirt. Okay. You see here, there's a seam line. Hopefully you can see that. There's a seam right on the edge of that. Now basically, what it does, the top collar is the collar that you see when the collar is folded. Okay, my battery went out a little bit. But anyway, when the collar is down like this, you should look at the side of it, and you should not be able to see the under part from there. Okay, it should be basically rolled under. Now if you flip it the opposite direction, you should be able to see just barely the outside. And this one it's even both sides, so it's not a big deal. And sometimes you can get away with not even doing that, but if you want to aspire to do things better, which we do, we want to make our stuff the best that we can make it, we need to adhere to these special little things. So what we're gonna do, we already went up here and outlined 1/8 along the top edge. Now we're going to do the same thing on the side, but we're going to make it go to 0 at the seam line, not the very end of the piece of paper, because if we do that, then we're actually going to the end of the seam allowances, and stuff doesn't always fit well if you do that way. So here's that. Okay, so we found out where this is, and technically, since we're doing things right on the cut line, when we're blending off, we need to blend it off right here where that seam line intersects with the cut line. So we'll do 1/8 to 0 here, and I'll do that and I'll show you. Okay, So you see how that looks? 1/8 to 0 here, and it's going to blend off at the intersection of the seam allowance. Huh? So, take my scissors and cut that off. And what this is going to do by taking it off the sides is the same thing that it's going to do off this edge. It's going to make everything roll to this underside that is a little shorter. Okay. So we did that. And gonna go back and we're gonna make this say about a 1/2 inch out. This is just our on the fold line. On the fold. Okay. Now in actuality, in industrial sewing and sewing in the factory and stuff and making patterns that way, they don't do on the fold because all the fabric is laid out completely and in one layer. They don't do folded fabric and all this other stuff. This is only useful for at-home sewing. I'm gonna draw my grain lines also. So this is only useful for at-home sewing when it's practical to fold the fabric and then cut things off on the fold. That saves you some time because it's not like you're making, you know, 50 of these or even 500 of these. You're just making one at a time. So there's no point in just making every single pattern piece, but it's good practice. So normally, like for instance, if this were to say 1, then this would be one whole piece. It would not be, ooh, excuse me, it would not only be half of a piece, it would be an entire collar for the top, and also for the undercollar it would be an entire collar. That way when something is laid out flat and you cut it, you'll get the entire piece, not just half a piece. Okay? And then, for instance, if this were to say, let's say it said 4, that means you're going to cut out 4 of these collar pieces. So first of all, it'll be a whole piece, and then you're going to cut down through 4 layers of this, basically. Or you, no, that's completely wrong. I'm sorry, ignore that part. You're not going to cut down through 4 layers. If it says 4 here, that means you're going to cut 4 pieces, which means in factory sewing you would need 4 pattern pieces, because apparently you need 4 pieces for the construction of one garment. So that's what this cut number is. In this one garment you need this many of this piece. So therefore you would have your one whole piece, and then you would have 4 pattern pieces if that's how many you needed to cut. And so you'd have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you lay them all down. So 1, 2, and however many pieces, your 4 pieces, and then you would cut all of those 4 pieces out. So from one layer of fabric, this is how many pieces need to be cut. So that's an explanation of the cut thing, and I'll probably do a separate video just explaining that. That way you don't have to watch through this video every time. Okay, so still making the undercollar, and once again I'm just drawing all the possibilities. And then write my name on it. And then I'm going to write basic straight collar, but I'm going to put in parentheses undercollar, and then JC Academy. Okay, then size 10 1. Okay, so basically excuse me, without confusing you too much. This is what they look like when they're stacked. Okay. So this is the top collar, and then you flip this over. This is the undercollar, and if you look closely, you can see where the 1/8 is taken off there, and it also comes off here, but it blends down to nothing at the seam line. Because really, when you think about when it's sewn, and it's sewn across here, we need it to join right there. Because if it doesn't join, let's say it looks like this past the seam line, this is going to flip under. I'm going to exaggerate this so you can get a better understanding. So let's say this is an extreme close-up of what 1/8 is, okay? This is what happens when you have two pieces like this and you sew them together. If it's originally supposed to fit into a spot this big, if you minimize it past the seam allowance line, then it's going to go back here to join this piece like this when it's sewn up. Okay? So if you have, so when it comes to the seam line, it's supposed to be way out here, but you have space missing. So that's why when we take off stuff and we blend it to 0 at this line, that's why we do that. Because that's the point it has to fit into that spot there. Okay, so I hope that was not confusing. So, because it can be. But anyway, that's how you make your undercollar.